Oh boy, here we go again. The latest big leak from the Rise of Skywalker novelization has now everyone talking about Palpatine again. Well, a Palpatine. Not Sheev Palpatine, but his currently unnamed son, which, as it turns out, is actually a failed clone. Which, where unlike Palpatine himself being in a clone body, made complete sense, and I don't care what anybody says, I'll stand behind that all the way. This, on the other hand, I'm personally not a big fan. Now, that's not to say Palpatine getting a son through cloning rather than the good old-fashioned natural way doesn't fall in line with his character, because when you think about it, then it does, and I'm not arguing against that like others are. I mean, I get it, doesn't mean I necessarily have to love this idea, but I get it. Yeah, I don't know, I kinda preferred the idea that Palpatine procreated with a woman and had a son, as the thought of that was just so fascinating yet disturbing at the same time, you know? Not to mention the consequences of that happening were rather interesting too. Sheev Palpatine as a family man seemed pretty unique, and I would have loved to learn more about that story, rather than the clone son explanation here, which again makes sense but is just too safe and meh at the same time. Not to mention, unlike Palpatine being a clone where we actually got clues and hints about that in the movie, there was absolutely nothing in the movie to suggest his son was a clone in any way, shape, or form. So that's why this news feels like it came straight out of left field. Surprisingly, there's also only one paragraph in the whole novel that is dedicated to Palpatine's son, and it's the following. The heretics of the Sith Eternal toiled, splicing genes, bolstering tissue, creating unnatural abominations in the hope that one of these strandcasts would succeed and become a worthy receptacle. The heretics would do anything, risk anything, sacrifice anything, to create a cradle for their god consciousness. Nothing worked. But their efforts were not entirely in vain. One genetic strandcast lived, thrived even, a not quite identical clone, his son. But he was a useless, powerless failure. Palpatine could not bear to look upon such a disappointing ordinariness. The boy's only worth would lay in continuing the bloodline through more natural methods. So a powerless, failed, and not quite identical clone. Gotcha, and to be honest, I do think some people are making a bit more of a bigger deal of this than it actually is, as when you think about it, all that really changes is now Rey is even more of a Palpatine than before, meaning she's got even more of Palpatine in her than say if the son had a natural mother. Which, funny enough, you'd think I'd love this idea even more so for that, because I was such a big advocate for Rey being a Palpatine. Yet strangely, I'm not. But yeah, that's really my main disappointment with this information. I'd rather the kid be Palpatine's natural son than a clone son. That, and along with the book not even bothering to give neither the son or Rey's mom a name. Okay, sure, I can see the mom being kind of an afterthought here, but the son? Come on, he was an important piece of the puzzle to the Palpatine family tree. So I do hate that we still don't know what to call him other than Palpatine's son. I mean, was he also called Sheev? Sheev Jr.? Yeah? I'm just gonna call him Sheev Jr. until his real canon name is revealed, if ever. Even with that said, I'm still interested to learn more about Sheev Jr. Maybe not as much now, knowing that he's a clone and all, but nonetheless somewhat interested. I mean, he's still called Palpatine's son for a reason, rather than failed clone number 25,000 blah 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 or something like that. Which leads me to speculate that at one point maybe Palpatine did treat him as a legit son, especially if he was grooming him for a greater purpose later on. For example, how did their relationship look like? Was Sheev Jr. just not that into the dark side and rebelled against his father? And then when Palpatine realized his son wasn't capable of Force powers, then he basically gave up on Sheev Jr.? Told him to pack up his things and leave the family house on Coruscant when he was 18, right? I don't know, maybe. Because I doubt these two had such a strong father and son clone bond like Jango and Boba Fett did, for example. But yeah, this is still something I want to learn more about just for the heck of it. And honestly, I'd be very surprised if we ever get a whole book or even a comic for that matter, detailing the father and son relationship between Palps and Sheev Jr. If they do, then I'm gonna be reading that because that's gonna be hilarious. N7 from Silo signing out.